right, Tony, did you get the slide?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Well, good evening and welcome to Knowledge is Power Podcast Live. We are back for a Tuesday evening podcast. And tonight we've got some very interesting information we'd like to share with you. And we're going to be talking about PTSD. I don't know why I keep putting a P on the D, but it should be PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, with our guests, Captain Frank McClendon and Mary Williams. And we're going to talk about how to deal with PTSD. I keep putting the P there. I'll change it. It's PTSD. Our guest tonight will be Mary Williams. My co-host, Francis Lockett, and one of our cast member, the crew, Tricia Primo, is here with us this evening. So we're going to talk a little bit about post-traumatic stress disorder. And we're going to get right into the show. And I'm Tony Renfro with Knowledge is Power Podcast Live. And we're going to get right into the show with our guest, Mary Williams.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hey, Miss Mary. Good evening.
Hi.
It's so good to see you.
Thank you, Francis. And nice to see you and Trish and Tony Renfro. Yeah, we go way back.
So tell us a little bit about, we have to ask people who has PTSD. And I'm a reader, and I do a lot of reading, and I just read a lot. And I found out that you don't have to be a veteran to have PTSD. You can be just an individual that never been to the military and have PTSD. So can you tell us about PTSD? And I'm going to sit back because this is going to be very, very interesting to me.
So I'm going to give you some statistics real quickly, and let me tell you about post-traumatic stress disorder. It is not just a military thing. That has been a label that has been put on the military, unfortunately. But no, post-traumatic stress disorder can come from anything. For example, we just recently had a shooting at a school. And so that was just on the news today. In Las Vegas, they had a shooting at a school, and in Virginia. So when you go through a traumatic event like that, you can suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a trauma event that causes your neurological signs of your brain to, let's say, go into it just really starts. I can't think of the right word I want to say, but
fight or flight.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly like that. And so you don't know exactly what's going to happen next. So you go into this mental state. And so therefore, post-traumatic stress disorder is not just, like I said, for veterans only. No, there's so many other people who have that diagnosis. And I'm going to give you some facts real quickly. 7.7 million Americans deal with the diagnosis of PTSD in any given year. So that is between 300 to 500,000 service members have been diagnosed with PTSD across 12 years of combat. So it's not just our service members, but you have 7.7 million Americans deal with the diagnosis of PTSD in any given year. So conservatively, that's about 95% of Americans with PTSD are civilians.
And people don't understand unless they've been through it. I myself was diagnosed quite some time ago with it from a traumatic event. It's it debilitates you. It will cripple you, and there's nothing that will really alleviate it until you are completely knowledgeable of what's happening, because it's bad.
Right, and people can go through. They can go through PTSD, reliving the event, such as nightmares or flashbacks, anything that can trigger that incident that happened to you, and you go back into that moment. Yes. Another one is symptoms that post-traumatic stress disorder is avoidance. And consciously or unconsciously, you try to avoid situations, locations, or people that trigger that event.
You actually disassociate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to disassociate yourself. Like, for instance, people that I know do not like to go to malls. They don't like to go to crowded places. The grocery store even can get them, into a panic state. For
Really?
myself,
Yes.
every time I hear fireworks going off, I go into panic mode because it brings me back to that place in time where I was. And another thing, anytime I go to like a high-rise building, like if I go to Houston, I'm looking around constantly behind my back and up on top of buildings because the enemy could be right there and you don't realize that.
Yeah, right. I can't turn my back to like a door at the restaurant. I have to watch the door, and I would disassociate at any time. I'd be standing there doing the dishes and lose track of, like, time would just be missing. Right. And it's crazy. It can cripple you for real.
Well, how are you diagnosed, or how is one diagnosed? Is it through like a psychiatrist, or is it through your medical doctor? Like, how would you be able to pinpoint?
So you have to go to your medical doctor, and then you get a diagnosis from a psychologist. And those are the ones that are the doctors that are able to give you prescription meds if you need that. They're able to give you clinical treatment that you might need. Okay. The military has that. We have that capability here in Beaumont. We also have that in Houston too. I was diagnosed while I was as a retiree, as a matter of fact, not just from the military, but also with other incidents that have occurred since I've been out of the military. So I want to go through our slide presentation real quickly with our viewers before time gets away. There are, the next slide, Tony, is going to be, there are 5 categories in the military. The first, and these are all in the way that they were presented at any given time, when any event that you go to, any military event that you go to, this is how the flags are all placed. This is the order that the military was put together. And first is the United States Army. Of course, you have the United States the Marine Corps, and then the Navy. The Marine Corps falls under the Navy. It's part of the Navy. Then you have the United States Air Force, and of course, the United States Coast Guard. A lot of people forget that the Coast Guard is an active component of the United States military, and they are the ones that watch our ports, all the ports. And anytime, like, you go like down to Atlanta, not to Atlanta, but to Miami, you see a lot of customs. That's where the U.S. Coast Guard is. So we have our Coast Guard is always guarding our shorelines. So that's what the Coast Guard does. And the next slide describes what a veteran is. And a veteran will be utilized to include reservists and National Guard duty members, along with active duty service members, inclusive of all men and women who have been discharged from active duty services from all branches of the United States Armed Forces. A veteran is anybody who raises their right hand and swears to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States from all foreign enemies. So when you raise your right hand and get sworn in, you are therefore a United States veteran, and you will be able to get full benefits unless you get a dishonorable discharge. The next slide is just the different numbers of how many reserve active duty people we have, and how many are in the reserves right now. So this was from a few years ago, but these are numbers that we know for sure because of COVID. Of course, all the numbers change all the time. So that's just a little bit about. We used to have a next slide shows you about the Military Veteran Peer Network, which I used to be the coordinator at Spindletop with. We no longer have this association, but I still do peer support which is to help our veteran community. I'm still certified by the Texas Veterans Commission as a peer support specialist. And what we do is we help each other and build a camaraderie of trust with our veteran community. We go through training and we help our veterans become volunteers so that they can go out into the veteran community and advocate and talk to our veterans that might need just somebody to talk to, somebody to listen to. We used to do great luncheons. Francis used to come to them. It was a great time that you could really be a networking to our veterans, for our veterans. It was really a good time. I wish they would bring it back, but it was funding, so that's federal funding. So let's see. Our next slide tells you about how Americans view post 9/11 veterans. Some of us view them, we have a split perception about our veterans. Some are considered broken and some are considered heroes. During the Vietnam era war, when they came back home, they didn't even get a welcome home reception. They got spit at, stuff thrown at them. They were called baby killers. This was around when my father was in the military, and when he came back from Guam, he was stationed in Guam during the Vietnam War, and he would tell us about how our veterans were treated, and it was horrible. I mean, I can't imagine being spit at or have stuff thrown at me or be considered a baby killer when I'm out there defending and upholding the Constitution of the United States of America, and I can't even get a welcome back. I can't imagine that. Another thing that veterans go through their first 8 to 12 weeks of being in the military, it's called basic training. That's our next slide. And basic training can last between 8 to 12 weeks, depending on which branch you go into. I went into the United States Army. That was an 8-week process. And as you can see, the next slide shows you what we go through. We get broken down all the way from a civilian, all the way up to becoming a soldier or a Marine, an airman or sailor. And it's like I said, it's an 8 to 12 week process. It's the next slide, Tony. And we literally get yelled in our face and we get a buzz haircut. All of our hair comes chopped off. It really looks like this, and it really is like that. You only have a few weeks to become a soldier to be able to go out in combat and serve your country. And I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey for basic training. I was in Delta Company 226, which was 2nd Battalion, 26th Company. So, oh goodness, it was very scary. I was right out of high school. So I was like 3 weeks after I graduated high school, I was off to Fort Dix, New Jersey. I was scared, but I was also excited because I knew I wanted to become a soldier. I didn't want to stay home in Texas anymore. I wanted to see what life was like outside the Golden Triangle. So that's why I joined the Army. It was exciting. It was scary, but I made so many friends, y'all. Okay, so our next slide shows you the continuous training that we have to go through. Training is 24/7 in the military. You can stay in the military for months or 20 plus years. Some people have been in the military for over 30 years. Some people have done 20 years and get out. I did 21, and that was enough for me. So training is always something that you're going through. You will be training, even in a non-combat situation, there's training all the time. You can never get enough training because you just never know what could happen. Let's see. Okay, so our next slide tells you about deployment. Okay, our deployments can last a long time. They can last a short time. My son is in the Navy right now, currently serving in the United States Navy in Maryland. And before he was in Maryland, he was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, and he went out on 4 different deployments. Some of those deployments took him all the way to the Indian Ocean, which is all the way across the world. These deployments are very hard on families that are left behind. And it's very hard on the individual soldier, sailor, Marine, airman, because they have to leave behind their families not knowing what could happen to them. I know for myself, I was a single mom in the Army and having to raise and having to worry about my son at that time, not knowing what could happen to me. And as you can see, our next slide tells you all of the different combats that the United States military has been involved in, which have all been As you can see, most have been volunteer forces of the United States. So when we raise our hand to uphold and defend the Constitution, we are literally writing a check to the United States military for free for our lives to serve. That's a lot of conflict, y'all. So our next slide shows you. If you look at the bottom, it says 222 out of 239 years since 1776. We've been in combat. Y'all think about that. That's a long time. That's a lot of years that we've been in combat, y'all. And the next slide tells you about the deployment cycle. Tells you about the pre-deployment, what we go through, and how long it is when we're gone, what our kids and families go through, how they have to take care of the rear, as they say, take care of home. And what happens when we come back from combat? Are we the same way that we left? You know. The next slide tells you about reintegration. When we come back from war, are we really the same person that we were when we left? I know I wasn't. Nope. A lot of us aren't. And it's really hard for us to get back into that cycle again. The next slide tells you transition is a 60 to 90 day process. Or is it? As you can see, this lady, she's looking at herself in the mirror, but she still sees herself in combat. Our next slide tells you about navigating and challenges that we have transitioning to civilian. These are statistics, y'all. Look how hard it is for us to find a job when we come out of the military. Why is that? Why do we have homeless people on the side of the road right now? I think about that a lot, y'all. Why do we have 250,000 homeless veterans in the United States right now? 250,000 homeless veterans are in the United States that are living under a bridge in a tent that can't provide for themselves. These are just some statistics I pulled. I wanted y'all to see this. It's just sad. It's really sad. Look at how we have to look at the statistic of readjusting to social life. 48% of us have a hard time dealing with trying to get back into the community.
Wow, look at how low the capitalization on training and educational opportunities on at 35%.
Yeah, exactly.
And life for us to be able to live comfortable.
Exactly. And not only that, but you can go to school for free in the military. The military will pay for your education 100% when you get out. Or you can go while you're in the military. There's so many different. Lamar University has a great veterans program there, where you can they will pay 100% of your military for you. I mean your education career for you, 100%. And then if you enlisted in Texas, you qualify for the Hazelwood Act, which entitles you to even more free education benefits. And if you don't use the Hazelwood Act, you can pass that down to your children and even to your grandchildren if you choose to, if they don't want to go to school. So let's say my son he ended up going into the Navy. So my Hazelwood Act can go to my grandchildren now because my son didn't utilize it. So if my grandchildren want to go to school, they can go to school. So that's a great thing. I want to show you at the very end, at the very bottom of our next slide, it shows employers avoid hiring veterans. 28% employers avoid hiring veterans. Why? Why do you think that is? Why is it that a veteran is avoided? I couldn't understand that. Why? Is it because all veterans are labeled with a taboo label on them saying that they have PTSD? No. It shouldn't be that way, y'all.
No, it shouldn't.
It shouldn't at all be that way.
And they shouldn't be competing with candidates in the workforce either.
No, absolutely.
No. So, we have so much to offer to civilian workforce. We have the best training in the world right now. We have the highest elite training to go out in combat. And we bring so much to the table, but yet we're avoided. I don't get that. And our next slide tells you about reintegration into families. What about the families that are left behind? Do you think that they're okay with us going off to combat? No. A lot of parents are expecting when that soldier or sailor or airman or Marine leaves, and they end up having a baby while that soldier or airman, Marine, or sailor is deployed. So our next slide is going to be talking about our transition from the military healthcare to the VA, and it's a beast. I'm not gonna lie, it's unbelievable. To this day, we have so many veterans who are not able to get their benefits right now, their disability benefits, because the VA is so backlogged.
Are you serious?
Yes. Oh, yes. They did a story on 60 Minutes. It's been a couple of years ago. I saw it with Diane Sawyer, and to see the stacks of military records that haven't even been looked through yet because they're so backlogged. Yep.
That's disturbing to me. I mean, you guys, and thank you for your service. You're out there fighting for our country, and you can't get health care or find civilian jobs. That's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. And not to mention the homelessness. That is utterly ridiculous.
It's a reality. It's real. It's real, y'all.
I don't know if you guys can hear me. Tony did say that I had some feedback on my mic. I want to say hooah to Mary for coming on the Roundtable Talk. As prior service Army, she knows what that means. So I salute you for bringing this information to the community and letting people know how the military community, and we have a very large military community here in Beaumont, Texas, how the transition is for us. As far as resources, as far as support from family and community, as far as having the opportunity for a job, like first dibs on jobs, having opportunity on resources as far as housing. It's a lot. As a veteran, returning home with minimal injuries or just a nerve damage of some sort from my injuries, I would consider myself to be blessed. But at the same time, as Mary alluded, we submit ourselves in our communities on volunteer or a lot of things in the community so that we can, so that the things that we are involved and engaged in can be our therapy, so to speak. I definitely want to say thank you for sharing this information, Mary, and I do apologize for being a little tardy for muster. So please don't hold that to me. So
we're going to get you, Chris. We're going to make you get on with it, as they say. Get on with it, soldier. Get down.
That's it.
But I do want to fast forward a little through our slides so we can finish on time. Getting to where it says the physical injury slide, Tony. Next slide. Next one. Right there. If you look at that, PTSD ranks third among veteran disability recipients. So tinnitus is the ringing in your ear. We have over 1,450,000 veterans that are diagnosed with tinnitus, and I'm sure the numbers are even higher now because this was a few years ago. So tinnitus is that ringing in your ears that you will hear. That is only a 10% disability rating for the military. Wow. That's it, 10%. We have hearing, I'm sure you've heard that ringing in your ears before too. If you go to concerts or if you go around explosions or stuff, you sometimes will hear that ringing in your ear. That is tinnitus. We also have veterans that deal with hearing loss. We have 1 million of them already. And as you can see, the different types of disabilities that we claim. Goodness, there's so many of them. And that's just a few. That's just the higher ranking ones. So as you see, PTSD is 813,000. I'm sure by now it's probably over 1 million veterans that have suffered from PTSD. Okay, our next slide shows you the brain, and this is a very, very important slide. I want y'all to look at that. A veteran's worst wounds may be the ones that you cannot see because they're in the brain. They're in that mind. Okay? Now, we have, as of right now, veteran suicide, and we're going to talk about that in the next slides. Our veterans are committing suicides 22 a day. And as they say, 22 is 22 too many. We have veterans that are taking their lives at an all-time high right now. Why? We don't know. We don't know what's in that mind of that veteran. We can't say. A lot of veterans are have given up on life. And that's why we have to get to them before they take their life. At the end of my slide presentation, I will leave you with a crisis hotline number that the veterans can call at any time. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Our veterans have that opportunity to talk to a live body, not a computer. So if you look at all the different pieces of the brain, go back, Tony, to that slide. Look at this. Military suicides on your left are the highest rate in 10 years. 10 years, y'all. That's crazy. And at the very bottom of the right-hand corner, it says traumatic brain injuries can increase suicidal thoughts and behavior. So if you get an injury to the head, okay, or a bomb goes off and you're part of that bomb and it messes up your helmet on your head that you have, it's called a Kevlar. You can sustain a traumatic brain injury from that. And whenever your brain is traumatized, different things can happen. Your brain is so sensitive. And so therefore, when anything triggers it or doesn't make it stable anymore, you're going to have all of these different things. All of these tendencies are going to start to fall into place. And we have to recognize that. At the very top of there, at the top right-hand corner, it says 20% of national suicides are completed by veterans. That means that they go through with it. They didn't attempt it. They went through with it. Let's see. Our next slide tells you about the similarities between PTSD and traumatic brain injury, which is a TBI. We use a lot of acronyms in the military, but it tells you, look at those two circles and how they come into play, where both of them come together. And suicide, affects traumatic brain injury, but it also has the tendencies of post-traumatic stress disorder. So all of those things come together. That's how much they play into factor with each other. So you could have the ringing in the ears, but you can also have the hypervigilance of PTSD. So all of this can come into play into a veteran's mind.
I've actually heard that they kind of think that PTSD and the traumatic brain injury are one and the same sometimes. Like if you have post-traumatic stress disorder, it could be because of the injury to the brain or vice versa.
Exactly. For instance, you see a lot of these football players have all of a sudden now these traumatic brain injuries now to their heads because of all the hitting on their heads. Now they're coming out with that. So I think Denzel Washington made a movie about that.
I think it was Will Smith. Will Smith. He was a doctor.
Yeah, Will Smith or something. Yeah, I can't remember, but yeah, excuse me if I put Denzel out there.
Both great actors.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's horror. It's really sad, y'all. This is really true, but it's these are really horrible statistics if you look at it. Our next slide deals with and it's very close to my heart is our next slide tells you about what is military sexual trauma. Military sexual trauma. As y'all probably heard in the news, President Biden just passed into law last week the Vanessa Guillen Act. Vanessa Guillen was a soldier in the United States military stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, at Killeen, Texas, around the Austin area. It's our largest military installation in the world. It is huge. And she was a victim of military sexual trauma. She was also a victim of murder. And nobody listened to her story. And I'm sure Chris can agree with me that there are so many soldiers that don't get listened to. Our stories don't get told. Our stories are swept up under the rug. Our chain of command does not listen to us when we come to them with a story that we've been a victim of a rape or military or a sexual, any type of sexual event that was not consent. And they just look at us and say, oh, well, it didn't happen. Or if you're a lower enlisted soldier, you might as well just forget it because you're not going to be listened to. You're going to be said, oh, well, too bad, so sad. And that's why Vanessa Guillen never went forward with her story. Nobody would listen to her story. Why? Because she was a private. She was an E3. Nobody listened to her story. Nobody was going to. She went all the way up to her company commander. Nobody listened. And look what happened to this innocent person, soldier, out of Houston, Texas, y'all. And these are some statistics that I've put up there. Since 2006, more than 95,000 service members have been sexually assaulted in the military. 95,000, y'all. That is crazy numbers. Where are their stories? Why aren't these people being held accountable? Why aren't these people being held accountable for these actions? It's stuff we don't hear about.
And that's part of the healing process for the post-traumatic stress. Is you can't be told that, you have to speak about it and be acknowledged. And that's obviously not happening.
Yeah, because we don't want to, we're not reporting it because it's just going to get I'm sure Chris can agree with this. It'll just get swept under the rug. Nobody's going to listen to us, especially if you're an enlisted soldier or a lower enlisted soldier. If you are an E0 to an E4, you are considered a lower enlisted soldier. So nobody's going to listen to your story. Now, once you become an E5, which is considered a non-commissioned officer, oh yeah. Oh, well, we might listen to what Miss Mary has to say or what Sergeant Williams or Sergeant Jones has to say.
And that's a strong might. A very strong might. I might listen to what you have to say. And like it says, service members. It didn't say females. It says service members, because in the military, men are sexually assaulted as well by other service members. The numbers are overwhelming. The stories are overwhelming. The lack of accountability, especially on that side, is overwhelming. When it comes to sexual assault and sexual trauma in the military, and like Mary said, it's a lot of service members who can't, especially if you are like a private first class or a recruit, especially if you are a recruit, don't even mention it. Just chuck it up to as something that happens, and it's sad to say that that's an atmosphere that you have to adapt to when you voluntarily join to be a service member of the United States military.
And our next slide, if you look at that, those are some really serious statistics right there. Look at that. Look at those numbers, y'all. That is astronomical.
That is crazy.
6,131 sexual assaults reported. But look how many were dismissed.
998 court-martials. And I was about to say, look how many was dismissed.
Yeah, look at the dismissal rate. Wow. That's over a tenth.
The crazy part about it is it's like most of the times those individuals that do speak out, their situation is swept under the rug to a point to where it's non-court martialed or reduced charges to, their a superior officer or superior enlisted non-commissioned officer, or even, from, just having somebody that's connected, because the military is also a I would call a very large fraternity sorority organization for some family members. There are members that will tell you, "Oh, my great uncle is, a general of some sort." So they feel that with them being enlisted, they can get away with so much. Um, and these charges are obviously reduced or dismissed because of their affiliation or association to somebody that they may know that's higher up. And it's crazy. It's crazy.
And what I don't understand, Chris, and I guess maybe me and you can dialogue a little bit, but I don't understand, Chris, to save my life, how an E9, okay, a sergeant major, can get away with this, okay? And all he gets is a slap on his wrist, and he still gets his pension. He'll still get his pension for the rest of his
Right.
life. He'll
And
get
most of
all
the
of his
times you don't
benefits.
get, there is no
I don't
rate
get it.
deduction. And there is no pay deduction. And like most of the times, excuse my train in the background, but most of the times, Mary, you may contest, well, can say or agree to it. Like you said, it's a slap on the wrist. Article 15, $250 out of your check for 1 month. That, I mean, like, that's nothing. Some individuals have are considered to be repeat offenders on sexual assaults, and they still get, the slap on the wrist, 250, $400. Don't do it again, sergeant major. Don't do it again, command sergeant major. Don't do it again, top. you know
I can't believe what I'm
this, we're
hearing.
gonna transfer this private, or we're gonna transfer this soldier to another unit, and you won't have that to worry about. That's the kind of stuff that gets swept under the rug. That's why families
Yes,
end up trying to figure out why my loved one has been deported. I mean, not deported, but have
deployed.
received orders to be transferred somewhere else, because their story is starting to get widespread. It's starting to get traction, and before it becomes attention to, like, a post commander of some sort, or JAG, they're going to move that soldier around. And like Mary alluded to, like, Fort Hood is one of the largest forts that we have stateside. Well, the largest now, especially that we
Yeah.
don't deal overseas as much anymore. So it's the largest that we have. Um, so I mean, like, it's several units in Fort Hood. It's not just one particular, unit in Fort Hood. Just like Fort Polk has a few units, Fort Knox has a few units, and so, like, depending on what your job title is, you might get transferred to Fort Knox. Just as your story is starting, your assaults are being, starting to get recognized, and that's one of the ways that they hide the individual, and they do away with the assault.
And at that time too, Chris, when I was in the military, and Germany was still alive and kicking, they would send you from the States, put you on orders so fast, and send you right overseas to Europe. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute, hold up.
Right,
And there's
right,
nothing you can do because you are a lower enlisted soldier. And
correct,
once those orders are printed, you're gone. You're gone.
right.
And what happens to that higher enlisted soldier, to that NCO, that non-commissioned officer? They're just going to keep they're just going to keep living their life and still even get possibly promoted, and they're going to still be able to retire with full benefits. Am I not right or wrong?
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct, Mary. And like you mentioned, I'm still connected to several men and women service members of the military, and I say military because the Army networks with every branch. We train with every branch, so um, it's not just Army comrades that we know, Mary. So, like you said. we'll get shipped off to somewhere that's predominantly known as a naval training base or a marine training base or a medical training base. Again, this is just so you can shut up, pretty much. That's pretty much all that is so you can shut up, and that the non-commissioned service officer or commissioned service officer or warrant officer, um, they're tired of you going back and forth and telling them the nasty shit that they do. And excuse my expression.
Yep, that's true. So that leads me to my next slide, Tony, which is suicides. That's a perfect segue that Chris led into. Um, perfect. We can slide right into military suicides because that's a perfect way to go. Because what happens? We give up. There's no solution to the problem. So what do? We take our lives. Look at this. The next slide shows you a statistic chart of Texas suicides. Texas deaths at the top up there, 3,403. We are ranked number 41 in the nation with suicides, which isn't high, but wow.
And all of this is come from having PTSD, correct?
Not
Correct.
solely
Not
tied
always.
to.
Yeah, not always,
Right.
but
Right.
sometimes.
Not solely tied to, but it is some type of mental trauma that is correlated with suicide, Tony. Whether it's acceptance from your family, acceptance from your lifestyle, whether it's college, whatever. I mean, because the reason for suicide is very grand, very large. So like, I will say the numbers don't seem, according to this slide, the numbers may not seem high, but for our state to be ranked for the 41st state in suicides, that is very high, because you have to also factor in the overall population of Texas. So and then that number, the number of suicide deaths in Texas is also, you could also go to, I think, the same website and get it broken down by socioeconomic status, race, and different things like that. So that then you can start seeing why that number should mean a lot to members of, especially to us in the African American community, because, like I said in the beginning, mental health, the gap for or the lack of awareness in mental health is the reason that we have a number of 3,403. And I think, Mary, if I'm not mistaken, that was 2018. That was 2018's number.
These victims continue to be re-victimized.
That's equivalent, because to get the numbers current has been extremely hard, because never mind. Yeah, it's been, I'll say with COVID, it has been extremely hard to get surefire facts. So that you can implement that.
So you said some of the common symptoms of the PTSD could be difficult breathing, sleep disturbance,
anxiety, correct, sleep disorders, eating disorders, socio disorders,
fatigue,
anywhere from packing your plate with so much work to do, and like I said, it's a lot of veterans that I know that will volunteer themselves so that they don't have time to deal with the four walls of their house, or what actually goes on within their mind.
Addiction is big too.
What actually they have to deal with on the inside. So it's I'm glad we had this conversation. We're having this conversation today.
Right. And so our next slide shows a funeral. And if you are a soldier who commits suicide, you will lose all your benefits, all your
All your
entitlements,
benefits.
everything.
Wow. And
So
and by serving in the military.
you cannot be buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Like myself, I don't know if Chris is eligible or not, but yeah, he should be because he served in a combat situation. So,
Yeah.
um, um, however, if I took my life or if Chris took his life, we would lose all benefits. We would lose everything. We would lose all entitlements. Our families would not get anything from it.
Wow.
And that goes for our life insurance policies as well,
Right.
which is most veterans have veterans group life insurance, and that's a very healthy policy. But like she said, if I'm dealing with something, or she's dealing with something, or our comrades are dealing with something, and they, the help that they sought for isn't helping or isn't rendering aid, and they so choose to, commit suicide, then that maybe $250,000 life insurance policy that they had for their family, plus whatever beneficiary they had benefits going to or left to, that's over. You're not Now your family has to not only know what you dealt with as a veteran, but now bury you because there was no support and or aid to keep you from committing suicide.
Wow.
So
Wow.
our final, I'm gonna wrap this up real quickly. Our next slide is gonna say what our motto is in the military. I will never leave a warrior behind or a soldier behind. You always hear this saying, "I got your six." That means I got your back at all times, no matter what. I know for myself, I will never leave Chris behind, and I know Chris has got my back at all times. So no
Well,
matter what, we will never leave a soldier, an airman, marine, a sailor behind. We will do whatever it is takes to make sure that they're okay. That's my pledge to Chris, my pledge to my country, my pledge to any veteran out there. I will never leave you behind, and I know that you will never leave me behind. So,
well,
um, and I have one more thing I want to talk about, and that's part two is working with the military community. Um, keep going. Keep going, Tony. And the next one is going to tell you about we do have a veterans treatment court here in Beaumont, Texas, in Jefferson County. It is in the 58th District Court, Judge Kent Walston's courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
It was established about 5 years ago. I was part of that groundbreaking ceremony, um, and we are so happy that we are able to offer this for our veterans who may get caught up behind the law because nobody's perfect, including myself, and we all fall short. And so sometimes we get caught up in the law, and we now have a veterans treatment court that we are able to help with our veterans so that they don't have to, let's say, go to jail or prison, or they can get a deferred sentence, so they don't have to stay behind bars that very long. This is an awesome court that we have this going through. Veterans Treatment Court is a year program where they go through treatment at the VA. They have to go to groups. There are requirements. Not every veteran gets accepted into the program. So if you go kill somebody, don't think that you're going to get out of it, because you're not. There are stipulations and requirements that you have to go through to get accepted into the Veterans Treatment Program. Like I said, this does come through the VA, the Veterans Affairs in the United States, and it also comes through the Houston VA. So I did want to share that. And before we close it up, there's some next slide just gives you some key components to look for, empathy versus I understand, have some effective listening. Don't be judgmental to veterans. And these are just some great ideas that I put together. Celebrate the successes of people. And that's my information right there.
I want to thank you. And again, like I said, I salute you for making this information accessible and relatable to not just the veteran community, but the families and the communities of the veteran community. because if we are affected with PTSD, then our greater community also have some trauma issues that may need to be dealt with as well. So I tip my hat off to you, Mary, because I had to like turn my camera off and on because to speak about my community, especially um, on this side as a veteran, it can get emotional. But you know, um, we find, like I said, we find our ways to deal with it, especially when we have issues with resources, especially resources that are bound to us, like travel pay. Uh, and it may seem simple, but like travel pay is very, very important to us. We may have to go to Houston on like in the middle of the month and don't have money because we only get paid on the first of the month. And so like that travel pay is not just gas, but it's our meal for the day, you know. So I myself and several other veterans had to write our elected officials and let them know that whatever process that they chose to go with to process the travel pay, do away with it and go back to having the Houston hospital issue travel pay because if I like it, I drop my letter today, tomorrow I got a deposit in my account, you know, or something of that nature. So, or you know, you remember they used to give you the cash,
Yep.
and so like it was, you know, it was easier for and accessible for a veteran to take those trips to Houston and even if we didn't have a car, we knew who brought us. Hey, I got $75 for you. You be able to take to my dentist appointment or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
But like it
Hmm.
got harder for veterans to do that because of whatever process that the state chose to do. And I don't want to beat anybody, but a few days ago, Tony had a few state representatives on that instrumental for this veterans community in particular, because those are the representatives that we rally to. Those are the representatives we champion legislation with, especially on the veteran side. So again, Mary, I definitely want to. I thank you for uh, always having my six. I always thank you for having my six. And you know I got yours, like you said, and um, Tony, man, we got to do this one again because PTSD is broader and it's affecting younger individuals in our community because we're not knowing how to deal with the mental stresses that we endure. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I really appreciate that. But I think that we should have a part two of this because I want to talk about coping with PTSD, how to
Mhm.
live with PTSD, and how do I know I have it, and how do I get help.
Yes.
So let's make this a part two deal, and let's come back with it in another week or two, and let's kind of give some more important information on the post-traumatic stress disorder.
That's it, Tony.
I got it.
You got it.
I was about to
Got
say,
it.
sound like you got it.
Them tongues get tied up.
Absolutely. And thank y'all so much for asking me to be a part of this podcast tonight. I really, really appreciate it. There are so many resources out there that are available to our veterans. Just reach out to myself. You have my information. Chris, I'm sure, can help them too. There are lots of resources that are available to our veterans, and we do not ever want you to feel like that you are left behind, because you're not, and you're never alone in this battle. I promise you. And thank you again, Tony. And let's do a part two. I agree. Definitely.
Yes, we need to do that. So let's make an arrangement on that. But you guys stay backstage when we close out, and we're gonna arrange a date, and let's finish this up because it gets deeper than this.
Yeah.
Yes,
We
it
want to
does.
make sure that we get the right information out there to our community. Okay.
Awesome, Tony.
Thank you, everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight.
Awesome.
Knowledge is Power Podcast Live. Our guest, Mary Williams. And we talked about the PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Look at you, Tony.
Oh, got it. And we're going to spread the word. All right, we're going to spread the word. See y'all Sunday at same time, 7 o'clock, right here on Knowledge is Power Podcast Live.
Thank you for watching Knowledge is Power Podcast Live. Be sure to like and subscribe to all Knowledge is Power social media pages.